Welcome to a special edition of the Interlake Sports Now. We're going to be talking some Montana Grizzlies off-season. We're talking football right now. I know there's Big Sky Hoops in action, but we just had National Recruiting Signing Day. Grizzlies just finalized their class. It's your boy Josh Dugan here. We're going to dive into all that action. We're going to get to a combo with the one and only Fritz Neighbor of the Daily Interlake. We're going to break down that Griz off-season stuff, and we're going to get to some audio from Coach Hauck himself regarding his thoughts on the recruitment process and all that fun stuff. That being said, before we get to that, reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Nomad. Vote of the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers in mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more information. All right, let's dive right into this Montana Grizzlies off-season action. We're going to start out by kind of just going through the list of the recruits who did sign with the Griz and are incoming to the program. They signed, I believe it was 19 total players. 19 guys. We got 5 transfers and then the incoming freshmen. Let's get to the transfers first, and then we'll move from there. First up, transfer from UCLA, defensive end, redshirt senior, Hayden Harris. Interested to see what this guy can bring. This is what Coach Hauck had to say. Hayden is a Seattle guy here by way of UCLA. He's highly regarded by his high school coaches, and his coaches in Westwood really like his frame and his ability to come off the ball. Anytime you can get a talent from that level of play, you know he's had the resources and all that to really work on his game. He's a senior. He's going to come in prepared. Could be a guy you see really make an impact early because as a redshirt senior, he's going to be looking to be hungry and get in there quick. So next up, Ronald Jackson, a guy who I'll discuss. We'll talk a little bit more later in the show. I'm really interested to see what this kid can do. He's a cornerback moving to safety. He was also an FBS level player at Akron, had some experience playing against teams like Ohio State and I believe Auburn. So he's played against some top tier talent. Here's what Coach Hauck had to say about Ronald Jackson. RJ is a transfer from Akron who knows our running back Isaiah Childs from his time there. He's got a good frame, a good feel for the game. He's a physical player, a good tackler, and he likes the physical part of the game. I think he'll be a good addition to our defensive back room. Next up, we have Cannon Paneloff from Utah Tech, redshirt sophomore, so he's going to have some time to grow with the program. Here's what Coach Hauck had to say about the big O lineman. He's 6'6", 285, so the guy's got size. You can't teach that. Griz O lineman, always looking for those big boys. Cannon is a young offensive tackle who's got a great frame and good feet. I think he's got huge upside, and his best football is in front of him. We're glad he chose us. That's big with an O lineman. That footwork is just one of those things. If it comes naturally to the big man, hey, that goes a long way. Sam Vidlak, last guy we're going to talk about, we've mentioned him previously on other editions of the Sports Now. Quarterback transfer, spent time at Oregon State, spent time at Boise State, redshirt sophomore, so he has time to grow with the program. That's definitely the thing that kind of jumps out at me the most. You get a guy who could come in, grow with the offense, and there is going to be competition in the QB room. But Vidlak having that experience at Oregon State, Boise State, you got to be excited about that, him coming to the Griz. And here is a quote from Coach Hauck on Vidlak. Sam is a guy we recruited out of high school. He went a different direction, but he circled back and found his place with the Montana Grizzlies. We're excited to have him out here this spring. Last up, actually, is Riley Wilson, linebacker, transfer from Hawaii. This is a name that really jumped out at me as well because I read he had experience playing wide receiver and defensive back. Nowadays, to play linebacker, you almost got to have that hybrid, almost like a safety kind of speed, unless you're really just an edge rusher. So Wilson, he has that defensive back experience. He's going to have the ability to get out in coverage and have versatility. That's big. And he's a redshirt sophomore. So again, time to grow with the program. Here's what Coach Hauck had to say. Riley comes to us from Hawaii, but went to high school in Texas. He's got a great frame and he's fast. I think he will develop into a contributor at linebacker for us. Like I said, one of those things, nowadays you really utilize speed at the linebacker position differently in football. It used to be, you want a big guy up there who could just eat up tackles, the old school Ray Lewis kind of guy who just chases dudes down, makes tackle after tackle. But hey, it's a different game nowadays. Ray Lewis was a heck of a coverage guy too. That was a bad example. But the point being, you got to be able to do it all nowadays. And that's going to be a good get for the Griz if they can get him in there. So all the transfers, of course, take it all with a grain of salt. We got to see how these kids fit into the program, give them a chance to adapt. But high upside talent throughout all those players. Now, let's get into the incoming freshmen. We'll burn through this list, get to that convo with Fritz, and then wrap it up with some audio from Coach Hauck. So, first up, we have A little bit of Griz alumni family ties here with Kalea Ayat. I messed up that one. Kalea Ayat. His dad, famously, Brian Ayat, big time Griz, led the team to the national championship game in 1996. Griz Hall of Famer. He was an All-American quarterback, so going to have some good genetics there. Coach Hauck had this to say about him. He had an interesting recruiting process with Hawaii so locked down during the pandemic. He didn't have a lot of film, but he came to our camp and just blew it out. He was absolutely terrific at camp. He also has good high school film from this fall. He's really a great get for us. He was a man of his word with this commitment and is just a really outstanding get in a terrific quarterback class. So Coach Hauck seems very excited about that. 6'1", 185 quarterback from Hawaii with the Griz ties there. Definitely a name to keep an eye on as he develops with the program. Next up, a guy who was ranked a 3-star prospect out of West Seattle is Elijah Brady. He's a cornerback, considered a high upside guy. He played on both sides of the ball in high school, 2-year starter on varsity. One of those guys who, this is what Coach Hauck had to say about him, dynamic, long, explosive. Elijah's a guy we got on late in the process, but we've known about him for a long time. He's a long, explosive player. Coach Cooper did a nice job of staying on him, and I'm glad we got him. Defensive back's going to be a position. The Griz do have some openings. They're going to have Jackson potentially transferring in. Brady's a guy who knows, maybe he gets a little action as a freshman. He's highly touted because you lost Justin Ford, you lost Robbie Hauck, you lost a couple other guys on that back end, so there's going to be a lot of opportunity for players to fill into a role. Next up, we got the offensive line right here, Austin Bueller, hell in the capital product. Coach Hauck said this about the 6'5", 250-pound kid. Let's see. Quote got cut off, of course. But he's a state champion. I'm excited about joining the program. Did make the list here. But next up on the list is another big man here, 6'1", 280 pounds. Dylan Cohen, also an offensive lineman out of the Seattle, Washington area. This is what Coach Hauck had to say. Dylan Cohen is another guy that came to our camp last summer and has been here for numerous games. He's just an awesome guy. The more offensive front guys that we have in our program, the better we're going to be. And Dylan is a kid that we're excited to welcome into the program. One last offensive lineman, and then I'll go on a little bit about that. Lucas Freitas, also a Washington product. Coach Hauck had this to say. Lucas is a late addition to the class. He's a big kid. He's got a great frame, and he's got good film. He's a guy that we liked last spring, and when we were out on the road and made a good evaluation on him, had to do it. So he wasn't able to come to the camp this summer, so he kind of slid to the back burner, but he's a guy we really liked and are glad to add to this class. So Griz adding some serious size up front with the guy who's 6'6", 295, 6'1", 280, and 6'5", 250. Incoming freshman at that size. Give him some time in the Griz weight room. Get him on the weight training regiment. You're gonna have some talent there in the O-line room, and hey, that goes a long way. The point I did want to add about the offensive line is, and we talk about this a little later with Fritz, but it's so important nowadays to build inside out. It's easy to get caught up in the modern day of flash and spread offense and just explosive plays. Hey, we just want to build outside in. We want to get the playmakers first, but if you can't protect the quarterback, if you can't get the receivers time to get open, if you can't create space for the running back to hit the hole, it doesn't really matter. So, no, it is so crucial to recruit that offensive line, and Coach Hauck did mention it's just great to have more big bodies in the offensive line room, so I'm sure they are happy about that. We'll keep this bad boy moving here, getting my notes in order. A lot of players we're running through here real quick. But next up, Cameron Guernsey of Butte. Actually had the opportunity to watch him play basketball the other night. Good athlete there. He's a wide receiver. This is what Coach Hauck had to say about him. Cam is another guy whose dad played in our program and grew up around Griz football. He was a really productive player out of Butte High School. We love getting Butte guys here. Cam's got great hands, and he's a really good technician for a guy his age. He's been well coached. We're excited for him to come here and put the pads on for the Griz. Another one of those guys who's a local product with ties to the program. Gotta love to see that. Definitely going to be one of those names you see making an impact down the road for the Griz. Next up, another local kid here, actually, at the linebacker position, Cy Stevenson. Libby Lager, I watched him have a 337-yard rushing game earlier this season, so heck of an athlete. One of those guys who was the biggest dude on the field and the fastest. So he's going to be playing linebacker for the Griz. It looks like he was a heck of a running back as well. This is what Coach Hauck had to say about the Libby Lager. Cy has a great frame. He played a lot of positions in high school like a lot of smaller school guys do, but he was terrific in our camp this summer. That's a reoccurring theme with a lot of these guys. We see him in camp, they do a nice job and end up on our team, and Cy placed himself in front of a lot of guys in terms of players we were recruiting. Heck of a talent, definitely a name to keep an eye out for. We discuss a little bit later on the show, but a guy I definitely could see making an impact as a special teams guy earlier in his Griz career. Linebackers, safeties, one of those positions, it's a little easier to get on the field early on, whereas if you're a defensive tackle, quarterback, wide receiver, unless you're willing to play special teams, it is a little bit tougher. But Stevenson, a guy who can make an impact early, heck of an athlete. Next up is actually another offensive lineman and another relatively local kid here to the Kalispell area. We've got a Missoula product, so he's going to be staying home. Tate Templeton, 6'3", 270-pound lineman from Sentinel. Here's what Coach Hauck had to say. Tate is a local guy from Sentinel High School who joined several other Spartans on our roster. And like those guys, I think he's going to work hard to get in the mix. He's a big kid. And like he said earlier, we can't get enough guys like Tate on our team. You really can't teach size. You can't teach work ethic. So if you get a big guy with the work ethic, goes a long way. I played a little O-lineman myself in the day, very small period of time, but it's a tough position. It's a grind. It's tough. You get beat up a lot. Nobody's going, you don't read the front page of the paper and go, the lineman did a great job today very often. So it's a thankless position. So I have so much respect for the big boys up front, and the Griz do understand that you got to recruit the heck out of that position because, like I said, got to build inside out nowadays. Talk about offensive line. Let's move to the defensive line. We have Jackson Tucker, a Billings West product. Jackson had to battle through a bunch of adversity, Coach Hauck said, the last couple years in terms of injury, but he's a guy that just keeps coming. He's got a big frame, and he's got good movement, and he's good with his hands. We're excited about what he brings to the table. Like I said, can't teach size, can't teach that work ethic. Excited to see another Montana kid get a shot there. Next up, this guy, he's got a lot of excitement around his name right now. We'll see how many opportunities he gets as a freshman, but Iverson Young, kid out of Texas, he was rated the highest player in Griz recruiting history as far as talent goes, as far as stars goes, according to 247 Sports. So Iverson Young, running back, he was a 3-star product, rated the highest recruit in UM history, is rated by 247 Sports. Just an absolute beast. He had letters from multiple FBS schools, including UNLV. So one of those guys who, give him a little time, give him the opportunity. You have a great chance to see him make an impact. Getting my notes in order again here. Let's move on to our next player. Hayden O'Peets, Capital, another Montana kid who I mentioned before, the linebacker with Cy Stevenson, another guy you could see maybe play his way into some playing time early. Here's what Coach Hauck had to say. Hayden is a versatile player. He's a state champ from Capital that can play a lot of positions. We see him on the defensive side of the ball. He's got tremendous upside because of his frame and his speed. He could be a dynamic player for us. Next up is another linebacker, Billings Central product, Clay Oven. Clay was just one of the great players in the state this year. He was a highly recruited guy. He's a big, fast linebacker, similar to the other guys we recruited over the years. I think he's got a bright future. So, Griz, as usual, bringing in a strong linebacker class. Been called linebacker U at times. So I would definitely expect the Griz to utilize that linebacker class. You got the incoming offensive line class. And I mean, I don't know. I just think that you like that inside out. Maybe they didn't add a ton of flash, but they have a lot of talent on the outside already. That's not really an issue for this team in case, you kind of look through and you look at the roster. I mean, they have a lot of returning running backs. They have returning guys on the outside. At tight end, they have Grossman coming back. Get the quarterback lined up, the offensive line stable. Next thing you know, I mean, you could really start building that program. So they also had Gage Slider, the Glacier High product commit. Coach Hauck credited, his hard work in the camps as well, his familiarity with the program, those kind of things for helping Slider land there. And he was one of those guys I had the opportunity to watch quite a bit in high school. Kid can absolutely sling it, just a gunslinger. So he's one of those dudes who, incoming freshman, a lot of talent in the quarterback room. It's going to be 5 or 6 deep. Give him some time. Give him a chance to grow with the program. It takes bumps and bruises. Incoming freshman, going to have to work for it. But very excited about the Kalispell Glacier product, Gage Slider. Like I said, kid can absolutely sling it. I think he has a bright future ahead of him with the Griz. So for the most part, that was it for the signing day class. I'm trying to figure out where my document went with the full list. I might have lost a name or two, but I don't think I did. We're rolling. We're rocking. Let's get to that interview with Fritz. If there's any names I missed here, we could always come right back to it. So let's get to this convo with Fritz, and then we'll get to some audio from Coach Hauck. Thank you all for listening. Fun stuff. I'm multitasking right now. You know what? Actually, there's one name I forgot here. That was a good tease. You thought we were jumping into the convo with Fritz. There's one name I forgot, and we're going to get to him. Jalen Hall Wide receiver, we talked about how they didn't bring in a lot of talent on the outside. Jalen Hall, wide receiver from Modern Day Catholic High School in San Diego, California. Quote from Coach Hauck, Modern Day High School in the southern part of San Diego is a great program. Jalen has been up here and fell in love with Montana. He was an early commitment with us and withstood some recruiting pressure. We're excited that he's joining the program. So had to throw that one in there before we jumped ahead to the convo with Fritz. But overall, just so exciting to dive into all this recruiting action. Seems like the Griz have a great incoming class and incoming transfers. Of course, you always got to take it with a little grain of salt. You never know how these young kids are going to turn out. And basically just root for the best from all. That being said, shout out Nomad GCS, Flathead's best manufacturer, for sponsoring today's show. And let's move into that convo with the one and only Fritz Neighbor of the Daily Interlake. All right, welcome back to the Sports Now. Talking a little Griz 2023 off-season football special kind of deal. I'm here with Fritz Neighbor of the Daily Interlake. It's been a while, been a little month and a half maybe since we talked some football, but it's about that time with National Signing Day now in the review. Had all the transfers coming in, so a lot of stuff going on. Did have one quick piece of Griz news today that broke. I did want to mention, I don't know if you heard of this, but kicker Nico Ramos and offensive lineman Chris Walker were both granted an extra year of eligibility, so they'll both be coming back with the Griz, both players who had an impact last year. But yeah, I just wanted to get into the recruiting stuff and your thoughts on that and any Griz stuff you got on your radar right now.
Sounds good. Yeah, it was some interesting signings yesterday. Some transfers come in.
Yep.
Bobby Hauck is one of those who's not a big proponent of the transfer portal, but if enough kids are leaving your program, you better replace them, and that's probably the best way to go. And they found another quarterback. They now have 2 Oregon transfer quarterbacks now on the roster for spring. Spring drills begin in a little over a month.
Mm-hmm.
There's gonna be 4 quarterbacks in camp, and I don't know. It just it's all year round. There's football, Bobcat football. It just keeps heating up about every month or so.
I know. It feels like this was kind of like, all right, we're back a little bit. I did want to, you kind of just mentioned it, but I did want to ask some of the transfer quarterback stuff going on. They have coming in from Boise State, former Oregon State quarterback Sam Vidlac, redshirt sophomore. They had success with Lucas Johnson in the portal last year, but having that final year of eligibility is kind of rough. I wanted to get your thoughts on what do you think of Vidlac coming in with some more eligibility, possible chance to grow with the program? What do you know about him as a QB, and just kind of the thoughts on maybe the Griz QB battle heading into next season, if you have a hunch of where it could be going?
Yeah, I don't know if I can call it. Chris Brown is suddenly the veteran.
Mm-hmm.
He has been there the longest, and AJ Abbott came in. He spent a redshirt over there at Oregon and came over. They've got Caden Hewitt from Helena High. He's coming into his true redshirt freshman season. That's pretty much the 4 quarterbacks, counting Vidlac that'll be there in the spring. Then in the fall, they had 2 more. They signed Brian Ayot's kid out of Hawaii, who they like a lot. And, of course, Gage Slider out of Glacier, who threw for a ton of yards and a ton of touchdowns. He's got a great arm and a great deep ball. So it'll be interesting. It's going to be a tough competition. I guess, pressure makes diamonds.
Yep.
A lot of them are going to be youngsters. So it'd be great if the Griz, for the first time in a long time, found a guy that was ready to go and was around for 2 or 3 years as a starter. It hasn't happened in quite a while.
Definitely. That was the first thing that really came to mind for me. It felt like you kind of saw the flashes of the Griz, and they'd find that rhythm last year, but it's tough when every year you have a new QB. Guy like Lucas Johnson comes in, transfer, got to learn the whole new system. There's so many moving parts. So, that'd be great if they could find that guy. And Chris Brown's an interesting name because he's kind of maybe, I don't want to say got a bad rap, but he kind of didn't have the most success filling in from time to time last year. But that's a tough spot to fill in. That wasn't really an offense tailored around his game. So he's a guy who might turn some heads in offseason, has that experience. So that's a name not to forget because I've kind of been sleeping on him a little. I'm like, you got Vidlac, you got all these new kind of transfers. And no, he's a guy to watch, though. As far as any other big names jump out at you from the transfers or anything like that, I did see University of Hawaii transfer linebacker Riley Wilson kind of intrigues me. Seems like a good athlete, played some wide receiver and DB in his day, so it's going to have speed, which today you do need at the linebacker. And then Akron transfer Ronald Jackson caught my eye as well. So kind of those are the 2 guys you could see. You lost O'Connell, you lost Justin Ford. You're going to need some linebackers and DBs to fill in. I do believe Jackson's going to be making the move to safety, but those are 2 guys who caught my eyes. any guys jump out at you as guys who can make an impact early?
Well, I think, you never know with these transfers.
Totally.
You get them for a reason because you want them to help right away.
Yeah, yeah.
The other name that stuck out for me was the one high schooler that signed this late, and that's Elijah Brady, 3-star recruit out of Washington. I bet he plays. He's pretty highly recruited, and it sounds like, at least on paper, it sounds like a really good get for the Griz, who, I don't know if you guys noticed this, but it came out this past week that the basketball recruiting budget had spent more money.
I did see that.
The men's basketball team
shocked.
spent more money in recruiting than the Griz did.
A little shocking.
They recruit a lot out of their camps. And in fact, if you're an in-state kid, Bobby's been on the record, said, if you don't come to our camp, we're probably not going to recruit you. So, it's nice to see get him an out-of-state kid that late that's that highly regarded. Maybe a little unexpected. With the early signing day, you expect those kind of kids to go pretty early.
Yeah.
See him go off the board in December, but here he is in February, and he's a Griz. So
yeah, 3-star talent from Washington. So no, that is good. Another guy out of state I was going to ask you about, according to 247 Sports, and I always take some of the early recruiting stuff with a grain of salt because these kids are still young. You just want to root for them to find success. But according to 247 Sports, Iverson Young, Texas kid, he's the highest ranked recruit in Griz history according to their website. Have you heard anything about him? And just kind of did want to ask, does Coach Hauck in the past had that willingness to maybe throw an ultra talented guy in there, or do you expect him to lean on the returning vets a little more?
Oh, I think he goes with the best guy.
Yeah,
and,
there you go.
The fact that they got a kid from Texas, they don't recruit Texas very hard. So MSU, in fact, recruits Texas a lot harder than the Griz do, historically anyway. And, Iverson Young sounds like a good get. There's 5 running backs in spring camp. I'm counting Osmo, who missed the last 2 games. He's been banged up a lot, and he might still be dealing with some issues. If they don't play in the spring. They save him for fall camp and the fall season. But Osmo, famously had a 200-yard game in that snow game, and then he, as has happened quite a few times in his career, he got banged up. So, Iverson will come in as part of the 90-person fall camp opening, in August. And until then, we're going to be seeing 4 or 5 guys fight it out. I really like the Eli Gilman out of Minnesota.
I was going to ask about him as well.
Showed some flashes last year when he got in there, and he had some great stats in high school. And so we'll see what happens, but I know Bobby Hauck would love to have a couple good running backs, hit that B gap, and turn 1st and 10 to 2nd and 2.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And when they've been good at that.
And it seems like the depth's going to be there. They did like last year. It seemed like they kept running different guys out there. And it's interesting you mentioned Gilman. I was kind of thinking maybe that's kind of where you see Iverson Young come in. Because I remember a couple times last year, just very few, but you saw Gilman with those sparks. They'd give him a little action. You're like, when this kid, the time comes, he's going to be ready to perform. So maybe that's kind of where we see Iverson Young. But hey, just like I said, kind of take it with a grain of salt. But it's exciting. Kid from Texas, reportedly the highest ranked recruit in program history, of course. It all comes down to how you perform those kind of things. But exciting stuff. And like I did want to ask you, we talked a little out of state now, as far as some of the in-state kids, state of Montana recruits. Does any names jump out at you as guys who can make an impact early? I do have names here, just Hayden No Pete's of Capital, Billy Central, Clay Oven, I believe, and Libby Logger, Cy Stevenson, linebackers, could see special team action, get on the field. But if there's any other names who jump out as you as guys who can make an impact.
Well, one thing I noticed, one thing that I thought was encouraging is they recruited 5 O-linemen and found three big bodies, 3 aircraft carriers from Montana. Historically, when the Griz have been good, at least during the Bobby Hauck era, number 1, they had great O-line play, big guys that were mobile, moved people out of the way for Lex Hilliard and Chase Reynolds and company. And looks like they're kind of getting back to that point. I thought the O-line play was off and on last year, better than it had been. I think that part of the team really took a hit during the Bobstead era. Had some rebuilding to do. Bobby did. And, getting the one kid back in the extra year, that's going to help.
Definitely, yeah.
In 2023 this fall. But I think I've been wondering for a couple of years, where are these old linemen from Montana? We haven't seen them around wearing maroon and silver for quite a while. And now it's starting to switch back that direction.
Yeah, no, great. That's very important too, because just that whole inside out, I know everybody loves in the modern era college football. It's so flashy, but you look at the Bobcats high powered offense, where does it come back to? Offensive line. So no, totally great point. I think if they can get those guys dialed in and find a couple guys who can make an impact early, big bodies, hey, that could be huge. And like you said, in-state kids makes it that much easier to root for. If there's any other Grizz stuff with recruiting you wanted to get to, I'm open to talk about that. I did have one question with the coaching staff. I know they had some things shaken up in the coaching system recently.
Yeah, that's it's a mystery, and I guess I don't know why it has to be a mystery, but at one point I'd heard that Tim Hauck was going to be the D coordinator. I don't think that's going to happen. It just the rumors are flying, but I think they're going to have two new coordinators.
Mm-hmm.
I think. I'm not sure, but I think. And so it happens. I mean, Bobby's first tenure, 2003, 04, and 05. No, 2003 and 04, they had Hammerschmidt as their coordinator. It might have been just 1 year. Mm-hmm. And so he switched. He kept the same OC the whole time he was here the first time around. But didn't happen with the D coordinator. He elevated Craig Paulson pretty early. And in the meantime, several coaches flipped in and out, whether they decided to do something different or they got a better job. One of them went to Miami, Ohio, I remember, Things like that happen. There's always something. It's not much different from, putting together your best roster from year to year. You're going to have guys leave on the coaching staff as well. He's had some continuity when he first came back. Maybe given how last year went offensively and how it went at the end defensively, it was maybe time for some changes. So here we are.
Yeah, no, and that's why I wanted to ask. I know it's always kind of a, you bittersweet. You have your coaching staff. I'm sure Coach Hauck wanted to roll with his guys. But at the end of the day, there was a lot of rumblings in the Griz Nation kind of last year about wanting some changes to that defensive scheme. So I was seeing if you kind of had a little inside lead of who could take that job. That would be big news if it was Tim Hauck, his brother, and all that. But we'll see where it goes. I just wanted to see if there was anybody maybe on that staff who you had heard rumblings or but no, good stuff. The only other thing I had to ask you, just kind of other Big Sky news here, and then like I said, anything you want to get to. I saw NAU landed a 4-star transfer QB from Cal Berkeley by the name of Kai Milner, and then Cal Poly just landed 5-star transfer from Washington, Sam Heward, who has that NFL pedigree, the Heward brothers and all that. So just thoughts on the Big Sky heading into next year, because the talent-wise, it seems like it's going to be pretty stacked, and there's some good returning teams as it is. So
yeah, I mean, it was deep last year. I think it's Cal Poly, there's nowhere to go but up, and I think Heward had crossed paths with the Cal Poly coaches before, and being from Washington State.
Oh, just talking about Heward. Yeah, no, I had heard that he linked back up with his old offensive coordinator who was his high school coach.
Right.
But just kind of, I guess, going into it, I know we talked a lot last year about the FCS was maybe better than ever and all this talent. Now you're seeing 4- and 5-star QBs in the conference. It's like the Grizz better step their game up. I guess the last thing I wanted to lead up to ask you is, do you see the Grizz getting back in that Big Sky championship picture next season? I know we're far away, but do you think they're building back towards they're going to be in the mix when it matters?
I think it's going to get there at some point. I don't think it's going to happen this year because I don't know how you do it with 2 new coordinators.
Yeah.
If that's what happens.
Yeah, and a new quarterback potential. Well, most
and
likely,
And new quarterback and possibly a couple new running backs. They lost a senior receiver in Mitch Roberts. There's a lot of
O'Connell and Ford on the way out. Those are 2 of the best talents. Yeah.
2 really good defenders. It might be one of those years like 08 when 07 they were unbeaten and they got shocked in the first round. 08 they laid in the weeds and made the title game. So you never know until you know.
Yeah.
But the league is really good, and I think it's only getting better. And I think I like the idea. I like the idea of Big Sky being the bully on the block instead of the Missouri Valley Conference.
Yeah, and that's how it feels like it's going. They're landing these names, and I saw NAU landed. I saw it was like 20 guys in the transfer portal. So, I mean, it's aggressive right now. It's going to be competitive. I know we're a long ways away, but just kind of wanted to pick your brain a little, see where you're at heading into, like you said, spring ball's coming up soon. So before we know it, we'll be talking about football. I'm excited. And anything else you want to throw in there, Fritz? And like I said, maybe next week or soon enough, we'll get into the Bobcats off season as well. But so much Grizz stuff going on. Thought we'd dial this one in.
No, it's, we're a little bit closer to the Grizz. The Bobcats signed a few kids yesterday. I really liked Colson Kuhn coming up from Sheridan after piling up 517 yards in one game, in a playoff game. not some preseason non-conference game.
Yeah, no
He
light
did in the
work.
state semifinals, ran for 517, and his brother's on the Cats and ran pretty well last year in limited duty as well. So the Cats aren't going away.
Yeah.
The Griz aren't going away. So
No, it's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, last thing I'll say about Kuhn, I did hear he was a Mississippi State guy, and then he declined his recruitment or whatever after Coach Leach passed away, but just shows the level of talent that's coming to the Big Sky. You got guys who could play at Power 5 conferences, 5-star recruits. It's like head into next year, there's no cakewalks, you know. I mean, there's going to be, I'm sure a couple teams will be the easy beat, but it's going to be talented. It's going to be fun. It's going to be loaded. So I'm excited. Thank you, Fritz. Anything else you want to throw in there? If not, awesome stuff.
Yeah, speaking of no cakewalks, Ferris State's on the
Oh, I
schedule
did
next
see
year.
that. Yeah. So,
Well, you think D2 Ferris State, but they won Division II.
yeah, so that's the thing. Maybe
That'll be tough.
reminds you of that App State Michigan game back in the day. You know, you never know. Sometimes teams come in hungry, underdog mentality, and pull off a win. So yeah, no, it happens. So that'd be the worst case scenario for the Griz. But long ways away from that. But awesome stuff. Thank you, Fritz, and talk some more Griz soon, definitely. Alrighty, thanks as always to Fritz for taking the time to join the show. I apologize if maybe my camera angle there wasn't the best, had the hat on, blocking the face a little. Hey, you know, I consider myself kind of like the point guard of the show, the quarterback of the show. Sometimes you make a bad turnover. You make a mistake, and what do? You take notes, you learn from it, you watch the film. I'm going to watch that one back, learn a little bit about my camera angle, not do that again. So sorry if that was a little bit tough to watch with the hat in my face there, but hey, it happens. Tried to fill it out with some great photography there. So shout out to all those epic photographers making me look a lot better. All right. Let's get to some audio from Coach Hauck. Again, shout out Fritz. Go follow him on Twitter, Fritz Neighbor. Basically, we're going to look at more kind of the philosophy side of Coach Hauck and some of his recruiting tactics, not necessarily as much the players in particular. First up, we're going to get to his thoughts on recruiting from programs with a lot of success.
A couple kids from Capital, too, also being one of them, and Hayden Opitz being the other one. Do you like recruiting from programs that had a lot of success?
Well, to a degree, football's a hard game in terms of numbers. You have a lot of good players to win games, and that's probably why occasionally you'll see us with multiple players off of one team. But that doesn't preclude somebody else. You know, you could be a great player. I mean, an absolutely great player, and there's not any good players around you. You're not going to win a football game. So, with that being said, Capital had a huge year, and there's a reason they had good coaching and good players.
First off, could somebody get Coach Hauck a water? Come on, man. Get the coach. You can't have the coach, dry throat going. No, I'm kidding. Real talk, though. I think there's a lot of truth to that. I think we get caught up in sometimes maybe their team wasn't very successful. Is that kind of like reflect on the player itself? At the end of the day, we see it often at the higher levels in the NFL and stuff where a guy comes from kind of a middle-of-the-pack college, quarterback, maybe had to put the team on his back a little more, had to do a little more, had to have a little more versatility. I think there's a lot of benefits of that. So, yeah, you can't get too caught up in that. Of course, though, there is that desire to win. There is that familiarity with winning and what it takes to be successful. So it's a double-edged sword. You don't want to get too caught up in it. But I did think that was interesting that Coach Hauck mentioned, that's not the only thing we look for. We just want the guys who got the talent, because at the end of the day, if football is such a team sport, I think basketball, it's a lot easier. If you have a guy who's just that dude, he can just take over a game. There's 5 guys on the court. If you got a bad offensive lineman and you're an ultra talented receiver and you have no time to get open, or you got a quarterback who can't make an accurate throw, I mean, what are you going to do? There's only so much. So yeah, I mean, that very well said by Coach Hauck there. Next up, this one really jumped out at me. Coach Hauck's thoughts on recruiting athletes who play multiple sports.
Well, we typically recruit guys that play multiple sports. I like it for a variety of reasons. One of the things is they're competing all year and they're keeping score rather than just a couple games a year in the fall.
Love that quote there. I think in the modern era of specialization in sports, sometimes it's easy to get caught up in going all in from a young age on one sport because you want to be a professional or you want to make it to college. And I do think that there's certain aspects of cross-training or cross multiple sports that you just can't teach. And like Coach Hauck said, just that competitive aspect of all year round, you're in that competitive mode. It is tough to always just turn on the switch. So I like that. I think it is good for players to hear too, because it is easy. You have one or two people tell a young athlete, you should quit baseball just to focus on football when you're 11 years old. You don't know when you're 12 years old if you're going to like baseball more than football. You know, it's just one of those things. Let's let kids play all the sports, get all that experience, because it all balances out. If you're a good basketball player, it's probably going to help you on the football field. If you can run and jump and have good awareness, like a point guard or good power forward, whatever, it's going to transfer to a tight end or a wide receiver. Okay, you get the point. I probably didn't need to explain that much, but I'm just a big fan of it, so I figured it was worth it. So last up, one more quote here from Coach Hauck regarding the transfer portal and just kind of the chaos that ensues.
I mean, there's a lot of film to watch. There's very little structure to the transfer piece. You know, we don't view it any differently in terms of numbers than we used to with junior college recruiting or whatever, right? But the three most populous places in America are New York, LA, and the transfer portal. So there's a lot to get through. Got to get the right guys, and it's really hard to manage.
First off, I'm all for the transfer portal and the idea of college athletes landing the best fit for them, and if they go to a college it's not working for them, switch it up. That being said, Coach Hauck couldn't be more right. I mean, it is the most popular place in America right now, at least in college sports. So much movement across the board, so much to keep track of, and we're in the very early stages. I'm sure 10 years from now we're going to look back at some of this stuff. It's going to kind of bit more refined. There's going to be more maybe rules, regulations, or whatever, just maybe a smoother process. Right now it's chaotic. It's the wild, wild west. Definitely a lot going on. So well said by Coach Hauck. Overall, though, transfer portal seems to have helped the Griz in the past. They do a good job of recruiting the quarterback position. The transfer portal landed a couple pieces. Everybody they brought in through the portal this year seems to have the kind of talent that can make an impact with this team over the next year or two. So overall, they had a lot of success in it. As much of a headache as it may be, it's a double-edged sword where they benefit from it. Of course, they're going to lose guys to the portal, but hey, if you can bring in the right talent to replace them, find the guy put the guy in the right fit, and the person who maybe wasn't the right fit, help them find a better fit at another school. So hey, that's the end of the day how it works. But hey, New York, LA, and the transfer portal, that's a heck of a quote there. It ain't wrong. All right, guys. We talked a lot of Griz football today. It was awesome stuff. We will try to get to a little Bobcat/Big Sky rest of the conference show later on with Fritz, talk a little bit about all that another day. But for now, we're good on the Griz football. Quick reminder before we wrap this thing up. Today's episode was brought to you by Nomad, voted the Flathead's best manufacturer. Nomad is a longtime supporter of the local community and sports scene, celebrating 20 years of building great careers and mission-focused custom vehicles. Nomad, a Montana-based company making a global impact. Visit nomadgcs.com for more info. That's nomadgcs.com for more information. All right, everybody, that'll do it. I'm Josh Dugan. Thanks again to Fritz for taking the time to join, and thank you for watching the show today. Fun stuff. Go Griz. I know we got a long ways away until football season, but hey, slowly but surely, spring ball will be here. The summer's going to fly by like it always does. The next thing you know, it'll be August, and we'll be kicking off Griz football. So looking forward to it, everyone. Seems like a great time to be a Griz fan. A lot of great incoming talent, whether they're freshmen or the transfer portal. It's going to be fun to watch. It seems like the Griz definitely have secured, there's no denying they're one of the top premier locations at the FCS level. They showed it again this year. Thanks, everybody. Josh Dugan, I'm out. Have a good one.